today's tutorial is particularly based on the business communications. We will discuss about the strategies that can be applied while we are drafting an email, text message, with the presence of social media. So we will discuss some of the strategies how to draft short and simple messages can be posted on the different social media portals. So let's start with the introduction. I'm going to share my screen with you so that you can have access to the presentation. Here we go.
Please advise me if you can see the PowerPoint in front of your screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, guys, so let's start with the objectives first. We have to concentrate on the ACE strategies today. ACE stands for analyzing, composing, and evaluating the conversations we are going to have in the business affairs. First, we will talk about the analyzing stage, where we will see how we can spend our time in analyzing the content, prepare the reports, and what should be included based on the audiences we are dealing with. Second one is about the composing stage, where we are actually typing or writing the messages. There are certain strategies we need to concentrate on, whether we are sending an email or using an informal medium to have a conversation with the audiences. Audience can be divided into two parts here. We can have a primary and secondary audiences. Based on the audiences, we will compose the specific conversation. The final step in ACE process is evaluating. While evaluating, we will consider the feedback from the others who are participating in the conversation, or we can also have a feedback from a colleague or a friend who is having a knowledge and understanding of a subject matter which we are going to present in the conversation with the others. ACE process is very systematic. It can be used in different conversations, whether it's a simple email that we have to write on a day-to-day basis to our colleagues or group members. However, sometimes we have to present the reports and presentations that takes place with the business clients. Everywhere we need to concentrate on three elements: ACE, analyzing the information. We should know about the audiences. What is the purpose of communication? Based on that, we will draft a particular message and we will choose the medium later on. And it's a continuous process. It's never ending. Once we are evaluating, sometimes we have to go back to the analyzing stage again to make some changes in the conversation. The question arises how we should spend time analyzing. We have to concentrate on the four elements while we are spending time in drafting or thinking what should be included in a particular message. First is the purpose, why we are communicating with the audiences. Who are those people, whether they're business clients, whether they're supervisors, or it's an internal communication that takes place in the business. And content will be drafted based on the audiences. While drafting the content, we need to concentrate on the culture as well. What is the business culture? How the organizations work? And based on it, we will draft the content. Medium will be chosen based on the suitability of the conversation and availability of the audiences. For example, whenever we have to communicate the financial transaction in a board meeting, we always have to choose two mediums together. We cannot only have a report that can be sent through the email. We also need to do the presentation with that. So two mediums will be chosen. One is the audio visual, and the other one would be the documentation that can be sent through the email. Now, of the purpose in detail, we can have a look here where we should communicate purely based on information or whether there is a persuasion required. Because whenever we are communicating with the clients or any other audience, we have to concentrate on why we are communicating, whether that communication requires a persuasion or not. Many times, the business conversations that are external are informative, doesn't need a persuasion. However, whenever we are having conversations with the clients, or a junior manager is communicating with the seniors, they always need a persuasion to make sure they get the desired outcome by having a conversation with them. So whenever there is informative communication, we do not need to persuade the clients or other audiences who are involved in it. However, persuasive conversations always require a certain element that will get us the desired outcome. So we need to draft our messages. We need to do the proper planning that what is expected from this particular message or conversation that will be delivered to the supervisors or the audiences who are interested in it. We always have to concentrate on you factor rather than me factor. Whenever we are understanding the needs and expectations of the audiences, we would be able to get the desired outcome from the message. Here's one example from the healthcare organization. Rosanna is working in a healthcare organization. She has to draft many messages to the different audiences. Sometimes she has to give information based on the benefits of health checks regularly, or sometimes have to convince the patients on a certain requirements or some habits they have to quit to have a healthy life. How she can draft an email or a message that is more suitable and convincing for the audiences. The answer is all about who is your audience. And based on that, we can draft a message. We also need to consider what are the challenges an audience can face in understanding the message, how we can effectively convey the message to the audiences in a meaningful and a more understandable manner. So audience becomes really important when it comes to delivering a message. Not everyone is the same, so we have to consider different mediums, different content for addressing different issues to the audiences. Analyzing the medium is the final step in the process of first stage. Whenever we are delivering the message, we need to concentrate on the suitable option available to us. We cannot choose the most convenient one. If we are using an email for sending a message to the supervisor regarding the report, we need to consider two options here. We cannot convey the message effectively with one option sometimes. We have to use the suitable options. For example, whenever there is a conversation going on about the future projects that will take place in the business, and an employee is having a brilliant idea that needs to be shared with the seniors and other colleagues, they might have to develop a presentation on it, and that can be delivered with the handouts. The two options can be used together. At the same time, we need to concentrate on the ethics and communication. Communication should not hurt anyone. Specifically, we need to look at the cultural aspects while delivering the messages. We can consider the example of educational institutes who are running their courses all over the world. For example, we are inviting students from the different cultures and social backgrounds. Their communication process, their understanding, and grasp of knowledge about different mediums of communication would be different from us. So we need to make sure that we shouldn't use certain elements, words, phrases that could hurt someone. At the same time, whenever it's a business conversation, we always need to consider that it should not affect reputation. At the same time, the image of the brand that is run by the organization. It's very important to read and redraft the conversations before sending it to someone else. As well as we also need to consider certain aspects that could have legal complications to the business organizations. We have to develop the content which is appropriate, meaningful, and understandable within the legal requirements. Second stage is the composing. Once we have spent a lot of time in analyzing the content, who is the audience, what is the purpose of communication, how we should communicate with other people, we have decided on the primary and secondary audiences, we need to start working on composing the message. Sometimes people think that composing a message is easy. It's not. Most of the business writers, they just send an email with their first draft because it's less time consuming. However, whenever we are drafting an email for the first time, we miss many things, and it could be very short and might not be understandable to the audiences because we are drafting first draft based on me concept that I want to write this, and I would like to answer the question in a particular manner. However, whenever we work on a second draft, we always consider the you aspect, that how audience will perceive this content and how they are going to react on it. Always have two drafts whenever we are considering sending a conversation to someone by using any medium. In composing, we have four elements again. First one is how we are managing the time. We need to do one thing at one time, which is scientifically proven that our mind works effectively when we are doing single tasking. However, in multitasking, it is quite evident that people can make mistakes as well while drafting a message, which can be sent to the particular audience, and that could have serious consequences later on. So always practicing strategic time management. We should avoid doing certain elements that can distract us while doing the composition of a message. For example, many people are busy on social media. They are sending a message to someone on it through a text message or by using Instagram or Facebook or Twitter while composing a specific email or a presentation. We have to divide the time effectively so that we can concentrate more on a specific factor that considers the you factor in specifying the message to the audiences effectively. Organizing the content is really important. We should know that how we should present the information in a meaningful manner. Business communication is all about organizing the content. While organizing, we should know what should be coming at the top and what should be in the middle of the paragraph and what should be written at the end. We can consider introduction, body of the message, and finally the conclusion to organize the content. And it can be applied while writing letters, emails, and also the memos that can be internally circulated in the businesses. Third one is about drafting the content. Once we have organized the content in a meaningful manner that is more understandable to the audiences, we need to draft it. We can draft it on a piece of paper. We can write it with the free writing tool as well, which is available online nowadays. And based on that, we can just write whatever comes in our mind first. And after that, we will redraft it to make it more specific and a couple of drafts are required while composing the message. Finally, the best content will be chosen from the drafts we have already created, and that will be the final draft that will be a part of the message. Right? Sometimes whenever we are having a conversation with the seniors or supervisors or directors, we always try to make sure that we are writing the perfect emails or presentations. We are focused on the content. However, the perfectionist syndrome can be damaging sometimes because it might be unclear to the audience that what we are trying to say. So we always have to work on free writing first and think aloud what can be best suitable for conveying the message to the audiences. And we can also use the bullet points and numbers to highlight the points that can be effective in conveying the message to the audiences. Always use an outline so that audience can understand what this message is about. Here is one of the examples of free writing where we can see that it is simply whatever comes in the mind of the writer, and they are just penned down on a piece of paper. I'll read a few of the lines. Free writing. Okay, it is really hard to start writing this report as I can't think of how to start. I know I need to start the introduction of this report with a statement of the problem and the purpose of the report. Now here we can understand that this report will be based on the problem and there would be some purpose included in the message. So one thing is very clear, that we have to focus on what is the problem and how it will serve the purpose of conveying the message to the audiences. And later on, the more we will write, the more ideas will come up with the free writing. Second point we need to consider is the professional format and delivery, how we can deliver the message in a purposeful and meaningful manner. Start with a purpose-driven introduction. Whenever we are dealing with the primary audience or the direct audience who will be the direct recipient of the message, we need to consider the purpose in the very first line so that they will understand what the whole message or email or presentation is about, and they will be interested in knowing what is written underneath the content. Breaks your message into short paragraphs. Yes, it's a good technique to organize the content so that we can make sure that we know what we are writing and have a clear understanding to the audiences. I'll share you one of the examples of drafting an email with the paragraphs shortly. Before moving on, let's have a quick look on the strong sentences and vocabulary that can be used to highlight the main ideas for the purpose of sending a message. And we should use the bullet points or numbers if there is more than one concern we are highlighting in the email or a presentation. And finally, we need to write a specific conclusion, which has to be brief but meaningful. Have a look at one of the messages that can be written in an effective manner. You can see on the left-hand side, the email has been drafted with just one paragraph. It's all together in terms of formatting. But on the right-hand side, you can check the email has been divided into different paragraphs, and the purpose of the email has been written in the very first line. And complimentary closing is there, and finally we have signatures at the bottom. That's more effective because it gives a clear idea to the audience or whoever is reading it that what is this about, and they would be able to reply appropriately to this message. Another one, whenever we have longer email messages, we need to use the formatting tools more effectively. We should know that how to divide the message in different paragraphs, and sometimes we also need to look at the bullet points where it is required. We should use it. And if it is informational email, we always need to divide into different paragraphs and use the bullet points or numbers so that instructions can be conveyed effectively. Yes, formatting is required whenever we are drafting letters. Nowadays, business organizations have their formats for the letterheads, which can be used for drafting emails. The same content which is written in the email can be copy and pasted on a letterhead in the similar formatting manner, which is more meaningful to the secondary audiences. We use this format for the external communication. Whenever we have to do the conversations with the clients or the third parties who are getting the information about the business, we always use the letterheads with a clear indication of the content along with the formatting. That's about the emails and presentations. However, whenever we are drafting a voicemail message, different strategies need to be used. Wherever its email is more detailed and explain the content of a particular problem or concern that we are addressing to the audiences, voicemail is short, brief, and more precise based on the conversations we are having with other people. So always greet the person first and also introduce yourself in the beginning, and after that briefly describe the purpose and the main idea that we are conveying with the audience. Finally, always give your information so that they can contact you back. And that would be more appropriate whenever we have conversations within the business or someone we already know before, but it cannot be used whenever we have the secondary audience or the external audiences whom we have never interacted before, because sometimes people find it inappropriate when they receive a voicemail message from someone who they are not aware of, or they might not reply. But yes, it can be brief and more meaningful whenever we have to do the conversations with someone we are in touch or we have a business link with them. In terms of, it could be a client. Whenever a business has to do the conversation urgently, they can send a voicemail message to them. Social media messages, which is very common nowadays. Most of the businesses are using this tool for brand building, effective communication with the clients, and attracting potential clients they can have. We always have to consider that the message should not be longer than 140 words, which has to be very precise, and a lot of time need to be spent on drafting a message on a social media, because a bad social media message can affect the reputation of the business. So always consider the purpose of the communication and consider who is the audiences that will receive the message. Because remember that whenever we are drafting a message on a social media, it will be received by the secondary audience as well. For example, one business employee has drafted a message and sent over to the social media that would be seen by many other people who are added in the account, and they might not be all of them part of the organization. They can share that message to the third parties as well. If the message is affecting the third parties, that would affect the organization's image and reputation. It's a careful tool that has to be used responsibly. We have the delivery and format for the social media messages in terms of microblogs. Remember, microblogs are always used for even shorter messages. 120 words, characters can only be used in this one. Most of the time, people use links whenever they are having microblog chatting. Twitter, Instagram can be a part of it. A lot of businesses are exploring these tools to have wider audiences for their businesses, because people are quite comfortable using Instagram, Twitter tools, and when businesses are conveying short and brief messages, it could be used for advertising as well. It can be used for conveying a social message that would improve the reputation of a business. But remember, it has to be used responsibly. Again, it shouldn't affect the business negatively. And networking sites can also be a part of social media. And here we can have more characters. For example, a message can be created with 250 characters, which would be about 2 to 3 sentences, which would give a brief idea of what we are trying to say to the audiences. However, we can attach a link with the title or a brief introduction of a specific issue or concern that we are sharing with the audiences. Brief and shorter messages are easy to read, so audience can connect with the message easily and conveniently. The more use of videos for links, audios would be really enhancing this specific tool in terms of communication. Blogs can be used for the detailed information on a specific concern or issue. Many organizations are using blogs on discussing impact of COVID-19 on their businesses, or at the same time how the stress management can overcome the problem of stress issues at the workplace, or people can also share their ideas and opinions which they find can be useful for the other people. Remember that here we also have two different audiences, one who are primarily linked with the blog. However, the primary audience can also share that information with the other people who we are not aware of or who may be not in a link of the organization. Careful drafting of blog information is required here. It can build up the reputation of the business if it is drafted carefully. Same formatting will be used in the blogs that we are using for drafting emails and presentations. Text messaging is the easiest and most convenient way of having a short conversations. People always use text messaging whenever they have to write a short and sweet message for replying to something that they have received from the audiences. Always use the professional tone whenever we have a business conversations. It could be more meaningful if we are using the words please or thank you or sounds good or praising people. Positive words are required here, actually. Use the emojis carefully. If you know the audience or if you know the other person, then use it effectively. Otherwise, avoid it. Because sometimes people might find it inappropriate in the business terms. Messaging, the faster, convenient, and very mobile. Anywhere people can send the instant messages. And sometimes it is used for the internal communication between the clients, organizational employees, and for having a video conferencing as well. For example, Skype is widely used. Skype for Business is widely used by the organizations all over the world, along with the Google Meet or Blue Jeans, WebEx. There are a few more tools as well. A lot of people are also using Canvas as well recently for having instant messaging, because nowadays instant messaging is video capable, so people can have the video conferencing as well, where people sitting at different places can have meetings together and they can share the ideas, and at the same time chatting can be done along with the conversations. There are many benefits of using it. It can be used to save time and also align the group conversations to one moment. That was about the composing stage. Once we are done with compositions, we are at the final stage of evaluations. Now, first we have analyzed the message by considering the purpose and the audiences. We also looked at the different mediums that can be used for conveying the message to the audiences effectively. We also looked at the drafting stages, writing stages, formatting, in the composition stage. The final stage is all about getting a feedback, checking it again, whatever we have drafted is correct. It should not hurt the reputation and image of the organization. If it is an email, which is sent by an employee to the supervisor or a superior, it should not be inappropriate. It has to be giving a clear indication on the message that is delivered by the audience. We will consider again the four elements. First, we will revise the content. Look again what is written, whether there is any grammatical or any kind of error that is not detected by the online tools. Second one, we'll have to look at the style and the tone. Always consider the positive tone. That would be more attractive to the audiences, and that people are influenced by the positive words. So it would have a positive impact on the message that we are conveying to the audiences. Always proofread for errors. Whenever we are drafting a long email or a presentation, we need to read it over and over again to find out the mistakes in it. Finally, we can ask a friend or a colleague, whoever is knowledgeable enough to understand the content, and they will give us the feedback. Based on that feedback, we can take some corrective actions as well to overcome the mistakes. Yes, this is one of the examples of Mr. Prime Minister's report, that how does he edit it and how does he review it and make some changes in it. However, this is the old report which was presented to Barack Obama. Style, how did we express it, how we should do the conversations with the audiences, whether they will be comfortable listening to these words, and how the information will be presented to them. Here we have to consider a couple of factors, whether this particular message is informative or persuasive. If it is informative message, we have to concentrate on providing the information in a detailed manner. We do not have to persuade people. It can be used whenever we are conveying the circulars or meeting information to the employees or staff members within the business. However, whenever we are persuading the clients with the deals, offers, and we want them to believe us or agree with us, we have to use the persuasive tone. Positive words are really effective. We always need to use the words which are positively affecting people, because those words will have a positive impact on the audiences. They will read the message and they will think about it in a specific manner. If the wording is negative, then it will have a negative impact on the audiences. That's a scientifically proven fact, that whenever the business communications are done with a negative word, the response is always aggressive, or people are not replying to those messages in a very effective manner, or they're not very interested in replying, or the response we are looking for, we can't get it with the negative words. So positive words are effective in persuading the audiences. Most of the time, we always have conflict whether we should use a formal style of conversation while having a business conversation, or we should use the conversational style. Conversational style is more effective whenever we have the business conversations. It should not look like that we are reading a report, or extremely formal conversations will have lesser impact on the audiences than conversational one. Conversational style encourages audience to indulge with the content or the conversation which is going on. So we always have to use the words which are more in common with the audience, which are more understandable, or the words they're using on a day-to-day basis. At the same time, we have to be logical and formal, but avoid being too formal. Yes, whenever we have multicultural conversations, international organizations always consider cultural impact whenever they are having business conversations. For example, one company is based in Canada and they are having clients in the different countries. So we need to consider the cultural demographic factors of that particular country while we are having conversations with them. For example, one American business or Canadian business is having a conversation with Japanese businessman. They always need to consider the Japanese culture because their culture is so different in comparison to Canadian or American businesses because they are very formal. They have a specific style of business meetings. So we need to check the norms, values that are impacting on their business conversations. It might be different from our culture as well. So always consider it while drafting an email to the international client or giving a presentation to someone who is belonging to a different social and cultural background. Proofreading is very important once we are done with the considerations of culture or with the feedback we have got from the fellow employees or colleagues or a friend. We need to check the errors if there is any in terms of spelling mistakes. It could be a typing error. It could be a formatting error that can not be checked most of the time by MS Word. It could be the sentence correction that has to be done manually by the individual who is drafting the message. We should know that how to overcome the problems in a systematic manner in terms of errors. What are the most common errors people are making? It could be grammatical, it could be formatting error, or it could be a sentence correction in terms of formatting. Once we identified those errors, we should know how to correct it. We can read it, we can practice if it is a presentation. However, we can draft an email again by going back to the analyzing stage if it is not serving the purpose of the audiences. Because at the end of the day, we want the audience to understand the content which is written in the specific message. Or ask for a feedback from your colleagues or a friend. You can also use the technology nowadays for drafting a specific message that would have more effective conversation with the audiences. For example, in this example, you will see the inappropriate level of conversation and the appropriate level. So many extra words are used on the left-hand side conversation. However, in the appropriate one, it's more simple and precise. Rather than saying henceforth all documentation is to be completed within 2 business days, we can simply say that please complete all forms within 2 business days. That's more clear and more understandable to the audiences. Another example, this new policy will facilitate the implementation of more beneficial scheduling decisions. This new policy will let us schedule shipments more efficiently. So we should use the words carefully and use less words while having a business conversations, but at the same time, it has to be meaningful and understandable. Sometimes more words can confuse the audience or they might not get the clear idea of the conversation they're having. Always get a feedback about your conversational style because everyone is having their own style of communicating information. Some people are using descriptive style. Some people would like to convey the information in a more conversational style. Some people like to use informative style while they're delivering a message to the audience. Always get a feedback from the audience. If it is an email, you can ask the audience, whoever is receiving the email, they will give you the feedback on it. On the other hand, if it is a presentation, we can look at the eyes or body language of the audiences, whether they are understanding the content. If they have any issues in understanding, then we need to rectify and take corrective actions in terms of communication style. Appropriate strategy can be used. It could be an issue in organizing the presentation content. it could be an issue while interacting with the audience or engaging the audience with the content. Accordingly, that can be changed. So guys, we have discussed the ACE process here, analyzing, composing, and evaluating. That would help us in developing and communicate effectively with the audiences. It could be used in the simple and complex emails, presentations, letters, or e-messages which can be drafted on social media. Do you have any questions? However, I have also added one of the extra support materials where you will understand the advantages and disadvantages of different tools can be used for effective conversations. But we cannot use one for all the conversations. We need to choose the tools effectively. It could be newsletters, websites, social media, blogs. For example, whenever we have to share a detailed information with the primary and secondary audiences, we always use the blogs or networking sites where we can link with the people who are potentially relevant for the business conversations. Newsletters can be used for conveying the messages within the organization and also sometimes with the external audiences. Telephonic conversations, when it is required on a personal basis, whenever we want to have a conversation with a client or a staff member for an urgent issue, and that is important, we can have a telephonic conversation. But we should know the pros and cons of each one that we are using while having a conversation with the audiences. Yes, please. Now, time for the questions. I would really appreciate if you have any questions, please come up with it. Yes, please.
Excuse me, teacher. Just now you talk about the level. What kind
The
of
business
level?
conversation levels.
Yeah, or conversation levels, and take advantage of technology tools. In this, you talk about the reading levels.
Yes, there are many tools available nowadays online where we can proofread our emails. If it is incorrect, the tools will correct it or make it shorter. One of them is available like web.x, that where we can upload the content that we want to be corrected by online tool. They will find out the grammatical errors that normally cannot be detected by MS Word or PowerPoint presentation. So we can use it specifically to check what level of business conversation we would like to have. For example, if you would like to have a conversation with your superior within the business, it could be a manager or director or CEO of the organization, then you have to use the highest grade level of conversation, because it will detect any kind of sentence correction that is required or any kind of semantic errors that are in the message, and your message will be more clear to the audience, whoever you're dealing with. You have to choose the level of conversation based on the grades by considering your audience. Whoever you're interacting, you should know who they are. If you are dealing with someone who is a client and very important, use the highest level of conversation, because you know that that client is really important for the business. It depends on the importance of the audiences. And remember that whenever we have a conversation with the primary audience, we have to use the highest level of business conversation. That can be detected by the online tools. However, if we are following the pattern we have discussed in ACE, analyzing, composing, and evaluating, we may not require online tools because not many people are having an access of all these tools. Some of them are really expensive to buy online, or uh, most of the tools are not really downloadable. Any more questions, please?
No, thank you.
Sorry, Adrian, it's Zola. Just on that same note, did it say on that slide that use like grade 8 or less for conversational levels?
Yes, they specify based on the level of conversations required whenever we are dealing with different audiences. I can share the link with you later on, where it will be specified specifically what kind of conversation and what grade of communication we should have, because they always have an option that whether this conversation is for a manager, whether you're sending this message to your client or to a customer, they specify it. And based on it, they will advise you to choose a specific level of grade for the conversation.
Thank you.
No worries. Anyone else, please?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, it's like my background noise go better now, and I type the same question, but my understanding is that ACE cycle we learned today needs to be ongoing, whether it's speaking communications or written communications, isn't it?
It can be used for both oral communication and the written one, verbal communications, uh, because it's iterative in nature. You can apply it in most of the conversations you have in a business organization. So can I ask you, what kind or who is your audience most of the time whenever you are sending an email or preparing a presentation?
I do a lot of email correspondences towards my business clients and partners. And I learned a lot in terms of how to be effective and put the other person first instead of putting yourself or your my own needs first, because I realized that's more like what I did, and that's how I made a mistake by. So
Yeah, it's very important to put a you factor. We also need to consider at the same time what is the culture of that particular client or the business associate you're dealing with. Do you have international clients or the domestic ones?
my clients, I work for Japanese agencies, so my clients are 100% Japanese, basically. But my business partners, Canadians or any other schools and other partners and locals.
Here, that's fine. Thanks for letting me know about it. Here we have to use the two different strategies. One will be used for your Japanese clients. The other one will be for the Canadian ones. Whenever we are having a conversation with the Canadian clients, we have to consider Canadian business culture. because you will see that most of the time you can use the conversational style while having the conversations. Whether you're sending an email, you can use the word sounds good, great, looks interesting. Whenever you are having a conversation with your Japanese clients, you have to consider the power culture, because Japanese culture is it's a high power distant culture. It's in a hierarchy. If you are dealing with your seniors, you have to be very polite, respectful, and make sure that they shouldn't feel offended in a very serious manner. That's how that culture is made of, and that they are following the values and norms, having a business conversation at the same time. Let me give you one example here. Sorry, please continue.
No, I was just going to say that I come from the culture, so I'm fully aware of that. But more challenge for me is trying to understand the Canadian business culture, trying not to be too cold or too distant or overly formal or anything like that.
Yeah, that's where we have to use a conversational style most often. And we know that it's we can divide the Japanese and Canadian culture in two parts. Japanese culture is a high distance culture, or I would call it Canadian culture is a low distance culture, where the distance between staff members or the seniors or supervisor is less apparent while having the conversations. You can use semi-formal words while drafting a message, and that is not offending anyone. And people are more relaxed in the conversations. However, you know very well about the Japanese culture and drafting emails. You have to be very careful whenever you are sending an information or asking for a request. It has to be very, very formal, because I remember recently there was a case. One of the business client, a Japanese business client, asked to come over to Canada to meet the marketing agency who was promoting Japanese products. So the CEO would like to have a conversation with them. And when the CEO of that company came, he was not greeted very well at the reception because no one was there. And when the receptionist came in, and he was already waiting for 10 minutes over there. He didn't like it. He was offended in a specific manner, you know very well. And
Yeah,
after
I was
that,
surprised.
she asked him very casually, "Hey, how can I help you? What are you here for?" And he explained that why he's there for, and would like to meet a specific person. And after 10 minutes, she came back again, and she said that she's in a meeting. She will come back later. Could you please wait for some time, and I'll give you a shout. He was waiting there for 30 minutes, and after the 30 minutes, the marketing manager came in, and she was little aware of the Japanese culture. She was very precise and followed all the values and norms that was required in the business conversation. However, when the colleague came in along with her, he was very casual, was talking on the phone, which is not acceptable in the business culture of Japan. They always want to have a conversation specifically and more focused, and they want to have their own time, so they should not feel distracted. So you can say that it's all about the cultural impact whenever you're dealing with the Japanese clients, or when it comes to the Canadian ones, you have to keep your conversation more straightforward or upfront, whether it's drafting an email or having a telephonic conversation or a video conferencing. The words matter a lot in the Canadian or American culture. right? And your conversation style as well. On the other hand, when it comes to Japan or China, or if you are also having clients from Korea, you will see that they always look for the inferences behind the words. They consider each and every element while having a conversation with the individuals. Check the body language. They will consider how you're speaking, what is your tone while you're having a conversation with them, and also whether they can trust you or your words. That is also very important because they believe in relationship building. So conversations will be based on it. Most of your Japanese clients will be looking forward to have a conversation with someone whom they trust or they establish a trust. Once they do it, then definitely you can have a client for the lifetime. Any more questions, please?
I think I'm good. I've been kind of taking any communications for granted, like it's still all what I think. So,
We can't
but
take
at the
any
same time,
conversation.
it is systematic something that going on underneath with ACE circles going on, and yeah, I feel like I learned a lot from you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more questions? Do we have anyone else? We have someone. AG. It's A. Komita.
Oh, sorry. I forgot to unmute. Now, could you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. I have no question today. Thank you for having me, and this is really informative. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for joining it.
SprottTalks College since 1903.